The autumn afternoon in 1895 began with laughter. Duke Herbert Caldwell ordered a servant girl to mount the wildest horse on his estate, certain she would fall, certain she would learn her place. Instead, the untamable stallion gentled beneath her touch, and the man who had orchestrated her humiliation found himself captivated by the quiet strength he never expected. What started as a cruel game became an obsession neither could escape. A duke, bound by duty and pride. A woman with nothing to lose but her heart. Between them, a dangerous attraction that would force one to surrender everything he believed, and the other to risk a love that could ruin them both. The September sun hung low over Westbridge Hall, casting golden light across manicured lawns where England's finest gathered. Ladies in silk clustered beneath parasols, while gentlemen discussed politics and horses. The air smelled of cut grass and expensive perfume. Hattie Miller moved through this world like a ghost. At 22, she had perfected invisibility. Her plain grey dress marked her as servant. She carried her basket through the herb garden, selecting lavender and thyme for tonight's dinner. She should have taken the servant's path. That decision would change everything. The basket caught on a rosebush. The handle snapped. Herbs scattered across pristine grass toward the nobility. Several ladies gasped. Hattie dropped to her knees, scrambling to gather them. Her face burned. "Do not look up," Lady Caroline Prescott's voice cut through the afternoon. "She is making quite the spectacle. Perhaps the servants at Westbridge require better training, Your Grace." Laughter rippled through the crowd. Duke Herbert Caldwell did not let it pass. At 34, Herbert commanded attention effortlessly. Tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair silvered at the temples. His eyes were storm grey, ruthless, unforgiving. A man who believed power came from strength and fear. He watched with mild interest until Lady Caroline spoke. Not compassion stirred in him. Opportunity. His eyes moved from the kneeling servant to the wild stallion in the paddock. Wildfire, black as midnight, untamable. 6 riders thrown in 6 months. An idea formed. Cruel, but instructive. Herbert walked toward Hattie. The crowd quieted. "You there? Look at me." Hattie raised her head briefly before looking down. His face was stone. "What is your name?" "Hattie Miller, Your Grace. How long have you served here?" 2 years, sir." "Then you understand the importance of not embarrassing your employer." "Yes, Your Grace, I apologize." "No." Herbert's lips curved without warmth. "You will demonstrate that even servants can rise to challenges when motivated." He gestured toward the paddock. "Mount that horse." Silence. Someone gasped. "Your Grace, I do not understand." "Simple. Mount Wildfire, or find employment elsewhere." "But, sir, I cannot." "Cannot." Herbert raised an eyebrow. "Or will not." She looked at the crowd. Some pitied her. Others anticipated entertainment. Lady Caroline looked gleeful. "She will fall off that wild horse. Mark my words." Laughter erupted. Bets were placed. Something in Hattie stirred, pride refusing to be crushed. She stood, leaving the herbs. Her legs trembled, but she walked toward the paddock. The stable hand opened the gate. "Saddle him, miss." "No. No saddle." Murmurs rippled. Herbert looked surprised. Wildfire stood at the far end, head high, ears back. Every line screamed wariness. Not meanness, Hattie thought. Fear masked as violence. She climbed over slowly. Her heart pounded. Wildfire flared his nostrils, pawed once. Hattie stopped, closed her eyes. She listened. Wind through trees, distant birds, her slowing heartbeat, and Wildfire's breathing, quick and shallow. She opened her eyes and walked differently. Not straight at him, but angled, giving space. Shoulders soft, unhurried. She began humming. A melody her mother sang. Wildfire's ears swiveled forward. Stopped pouring. Hattie reached the center and waited, did not look directly at him. Minutes passed. Then Wildfire stepped toward her. Another step. Another. When close, Hattie raised her hand slowly. His breath was hot on her skin. Still humming, she touched his neck, pressed gently. He shuddered, did not move away. She leaned close, whispering, I know you are afraid. They hurt you. I know. She gathered mane and swung onto his back. Wildfire exploded. His muscles bunched as he burst across the paddock. Most riders would grip tight, fight for control. Hattie loosened her grip, leaned forward along his neck, made herself part of him. She kept humming. He galloped wildly, turned sharp, tried bucking. But Hattie moved with him, breathing with his rhythm. She felt when his fear eased, straightened slightly, guided him with pressure so light it barely existed. Wildfire slowed to canter, then trot. At the far fence he walked, head low. The nobility was silent. Hattie sat atop the black horse, dress dusty, hair loose, nothing like the terrified servant moments before. She looked powerful. Herbert stood frozen, expected humiliation. Instead watched this servant achieve what 6 riders could not. Uncertainty washed over him, and something else he could not name. Hattie guided Wildfire back. At the fence, she slid down, legs trembling. Curtsied, eyes down. Will that be all, Your Grace? Herbert opened his mouth, closed it. No words came. He stared at the woman who made a fool of him without one defiant word. Hattie took his silence as dismissal. She walked across the lawn, leaving Wildfire calm, leaving stunned nobles, leaving Herbert alone watching her retreat with an expression he could not name. Inside, in the servants' quarters, Hattie's composure cracked. Her hands shook. She sank onto her bed and breathed through delayed terror. She survived, but she had no idea survival was only beginning. That the Duke who laughed would soon think endlessly about the woman who refused to break. That the real test was not the wild horse. It was what came next. By nightfall, the incident spread through Westbridge Hall like wildfire itself. In the drawing rooms, nobles whispered over brandy and cards. In the servants' corridors, maids exchanged theories in hushed voices. Everyone had an opinion about what they witnessed. Lady Caroline held court in the green salon, surrounded by eager listeners. She swirled wine in her crystal glass, voice carrying just enough to be heard by all. Surely she used some country trick. These peasant girls know herbs and potions. My grandmother's cook once drugged a horse to seem docile. It is an old deception. A gentleman nodded thoughtfully. Perhaps she fed the beast something beforehand, made arrangements with the stable hands. Precisely. Caroline's smile was sharp. A girl of her station could never possess true skill with animals. It defies natural order. She has made fools of us all, and worse, made His Grace appear soft. The word hung in the air like accusation. We cannot have servants believing they can rise above their place through parlor tricks. Caroline set down her glass with deliberate care. It sets a dangerous precedent. I shall speak with the housekeeper in the morning. Surely Westbridge has no place for a girl who causes such disruption. In the servants' hall below, Hattie sat on her narrow bed, still trembling. Her roommate Molly burst through the door, eyes wide with news and worry. Hattie, everyone is talking. Lady Caroline is saying terrible things, that you cheated somehow, that you should be dismissed. Hattie's stomach twisted. I did nothing wrong. I just did what he ordered. I know that. Molly sat beside her, taking her hand. But Caroline does not care about truth. She cares about appearances. And you made them all look foolish today, especially her. She pushed for that challenge, you know, wanted to see you humiliated. Hattie thought of the Duke's cold eyes, his cruel smile. Then he got his wish. I was humiliated, just not in the way he expected. That is what frightens them. Molly squeezed her hand. You were supposed to fail, supposed to know your place. Instead, you showed them something they do not understand. And powerful people hate what they cannot understand. Later, unable to sleep, Hattie slipped from her room. The house was quiet. Most guests retired for the night. She moved through shadowed corridors toward the stable, needing to see Wildfire, needing to confirm he was real, that today actually happened. The stable smelled of hay and horse, familiar and comforting. Moonlight filtered through high windows, casting silver across the stalls. Wildfire stood in his enclosure, head turning as she approached. Hello, beautiful boy. Hattie reached through the bars, stroking his nose. They are saying, I tricked you, used magic or medicine. They cannot believe you simply chose to trust me. The horse pressed into her touch, breathing softly. I understand. Hattie leaned her forehead against the bars. They are the same with people. They think fear is the only way to control anything. That kindness is weakness. But you and I know better, do we not? Do we? Hattie spun around, heart leaping. Herbert stood in the stable entrance, no jacket, sleeves rolled to his elbows. Moonlight caught the sharp lines of his face, made him look less like a duke and more like a man. Less imposing, more human. Your Grace. Hattie started to curtsy, fumbling in her shock. Do not. His voice was quieter than this afternoon. Not here. Silence stretched between them. Hattie's pulse hammered. Was she in trouble? Would he dismiss her now, away from witnesses? Herbert walked closer, stopping a few feet away. His eyes moved between her and the horse. You speak to him as though he were a person. Hattie's throat was dry. I suppose I do, sir. Why? She hesitated. Because he understands loneliness, fear. What it feels like to be seen as something to be broken rather than something to be known. Herbert's jaw tightened. You think I tried to break him? I think someone did. Hattie found courage she did not know she possessed. Whether it was you or the men before you, I cannot say. But he carries that fear. It comes out as anger because anger feels safer than showing pain. And you? Herbert's eyes fixed on her. What do you carry? The question caught her off guard. The Duke was not supposed to ask servants personal questions. He was not supposed to stand in dim stables at night, talking to them like equals. Everyone carries something, Your Grace. Hattie said carefully. Some of us just have less choice about where we put it down. Something shifted in Herbert's expression. Not quite a smile, something more complicated. This afternoon. He stepped closer to Wildfire's stall. What you did? That was not luck or trickery, was it? No, sir. Then how? Hattie chose her words carefully. I did not try to command him. I listened, waited. Let him choose to come to me. Control is not the same as trust, Your Grace. One you take by force. The other must be given freely. Herbert's hands gripped the stall bars. And you believe trust is stronger? I believe it lasts longer. Control breaks the moment someone stronger comes along. Trust can hold even when everything else falls apart. Herbert turned to look at her fully. The moonlight made his grey eyes almost silver. Hattie felt the weight of that gaze, assessing her not as a servant, but as something else. Someone who challenged everything he built his life believing. Lady Caroline says you used deception, that a girl of your station could not possibly possess genuine skill. Lady Caroline fears anything that questions the order she benefits from. Hattie met his eyes, tired of being afraid. I have nothing to hide, Your Grace. I am exactly what I appear. No more, no less. And what is that? Someone who understands that strength does not always look like power. The words hung between them, charged with meaning neither fully understood yet. Herbert's fingers tightened on the bars. He opened his mouth as if to speak, then closed it. Finally, he stepped back. I should return. It is late. Yes, Your Grace. But he did not leave immediately. He stood there, moonlight and shadow playing across his face, looking at her with an expression that made Hattie's breath catch. You are not what I expected, Miss Miller. I could say the same, Your Grace. A ghost of something, surprise perhaps, crossed his features. Then he turned and walked toward the stable entrance. At the doorway he paused without looking back. Lady Caroline will try to have you dismissed. I will ensure she does not succeed. You have done nothing wrong. Then he was gone, footsteps fading into the night. Hattie stood frozen, heart racing. The Duke had defended her, sought her out, talked to her not as master to servant, but as one person to another. And the way he looked at her in that final moment, something in those storm-grey eyes that made her stomach flutter and her skin feel too warm. Wildfire nickered softly, bringing her back to the present. What just happened? She whispered to the horse. What was that? But Wildfire had no answers, and Hattie was left standing in the moonlit stable, wondering why her hands still trembled, why her heart still raced, and why the memory of the Duke's gaze made something deep inside her shift and change. Everything was different now. She felt it like a change in the weather before a storm. The challenge in the paddock was just the beginning. Whatever came next would be more complicated, more dangerous, and infinitely harder to predict. She touched the small brooch at her collar, her mother's brooch and tried to steady herself. But deep down, Hattie Miller knew that steady was no longer possible. Not when Duke Herbert Caldwell looked at her like she was a puzzle he needed to solve. Not when his presence made the air feel electric and strange. Not when she realized with growing alarm that she had looked back at him the same way. Morning came too quickly. Hattie woke to Molly shaking her shoulder, sunlight already streaming through the small window. "You overslept. Cook is furious. Hurry." Hattie dressed quickly, fingers clumsy with the buttons. Her mind kept returning to the stable, to moonlight and the Duke's unexpected words. She touched her mother's brooch, centering herself, then rushed downstairs. The day passed in a blur of tasks, scrubbing, polishing, serving breakfast to guests who did not look at her. By afternoon, exhaustion pulled at her limbs. She was carrying fresh linens up the back stairs when a footman intercepted her. "Miss Miller, His Grace requests your presence in the stable. Immediately." Hattie's stomach dropped. Requests, not orders. The distinction felt important somehow. She found Herbert in the stable, standing before Wildfire's stall with his arms crossed. Daylight made him look different than moonlight had. More imposing, more Duke, less man. "Your Grace," she curtsied. "Miss Miller." Herbert's voice was formal, almost cold, but his eyes held something else. "I have a proposition, sir. You will teach me." He gestured toward Wildfire. "How to handle him as you did. I will not have it said that my own horse responds better to a servant than to me." There it was. Pride. Hattie had expected it. "I am not certain I can teach what cannot be learned through command, Your Grace." Herbert's jaw tightened. "Are you refusing?" "I am saying that if you wish to learn, you must be willing to unlearn first, to set aside what you believe about control and dominance." Herbert stared at her for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was lower. "I am here, am I not? That should tell you something. It tells me you dislike being bested." Hattie met his gaze. "It does not tell me you are ready to change." A muscle worked in his jaw. "Then what would convince you?" "Come into the stall with me." No commands. No expectations. Just observation. Herbert hesitated. Then, surprising them both, he nodded. Inside the stall, Wildfire shifted nervously. Herbert's presence, all that coiled tension, made the horse anxious. "Breathe," Hattie said softly. "He feels your rigidity, your need to control. It frightens him. I am not doing anything." "Exactly. You are holding everything so tight it radiates from you." She stepped closer to Herbert, close enough to feel the heat of him. "Your shoulders. Drop them." Herbert did not move. "Your Grace." Her voice was gentle but firm. "If you wish to learn, you must trust the teacher." Slowly, Herbert relaxed his shoulders. Marginally. But enough. Better. "Now breathe. Deeply. Let the air fill your chest and release it slowly." Herbert inhaled. His chest expanded beneath the fine linen of his shirt. When he exhaled, some of the tension left him. Wildfire's ears swiveled forward. "You see?" Hattie whispered. "He notices. Animals read us better than we read ourselves." They stood there, breathing in the quiet stable, dust motes dancing in shafts of sunlight. Hattie was acutely aware of Herbert beside her, the breadth of his shoulders, the faint scent of sandalwood and leather. Her heart beat faster for reasons that had nothing to do with the horse. "Now approach him, slowly. No direct eye contact. Let him see you from the side." Herbert moved forward, stiff at first, then gradually finding a smoother rhythm. Wildfire watched, but did not retreat. "Stop there," Hattie instructed. "Wait, let him come to you if he chooses." Herbert stood motionless. Hattie saw the effort it cost him, this man accustomed to taking what he wanted. Waiting went against his very nature. But he waited. After what felt like an eternity, Wildfire took one tentative step toward the Duke, then another. "Do not move." Hattie breathed. "Let him investigate you." Wildfire's nose reached toward Herbert's outstretched hand, sniffed, then gently pressed into his palm. Something shifted in Herbert's face. Wonder, perhaps, or recognition of something he had been missing all along. Good. Hattie moved closer, standing just behind Herbert. "Now stroke his neck. not to control, just to connect. Herbert's hand moved to Wildfire's neck. His touch was hesitant, unpracticed. Too firm. Softer. Hattie reached up without thinking, her hand covering Herbert's, guiding the motion. Like this. Feel the warmth. The life beneath the skin. The moment her hand touched his, electricity shot through her. Herbert went completely still. They stood frozen, her small hand over his large one, both touching Wildfire's neck, but suddenly aware only of each other. Hattie's breath caught. She should pull away. This was improper, dangerous, but she could not move, could not break the spell of this moment. Herbert turned his head slightly. Their faces were inches apart. She could see the dark ring around his grey irises, the faint stubble along his jaw, the way his lips parted as if to speak but found no words. Miss Miller. His voice was rough, barely above a whisper. Your Grace. Hers was no steadier. Neither moved. The stable felt impossibly small, the air thick and charged. Hattie's pulse thundered in her ears. Herbert's eyes dropped to her mouth, then back to her eyes. The hand beneath hers tensed. Then Wildfire shifted, breaking the moment. Hattie jerked back, face burning. Herbert's hand fell to his side, fingers curling into a fist. I should. Hattie's voice shook. That is enough for today. Too much happened too quickly. He needs rest. Herbert nodded, not looking at her. His jaw was tight again, all that carefully controlled tension back in place. Yes, of course. Hattie fled the stall, heart racing. Behind her, she heard Herbert's heavy exhale, the sound of a man fighting for composure. What had just happened? It was meant to be a simple lesson about horses. Instead, it became something else entirely, something that made her skin feel too hot and her thoughts scatter like startled birds. She made it halfway across the stable yard before Herbert's voice stopped her. Miss Miller. She turned. He stood in the stable doorway, backlit by the dim interior, his silhouette strong and solid. Tomorrow, same time. We will continue the lessons. It was not a question. But it was not quite a command either. Something in between, an invitation wrapped in authority. Hattie nodded, not trusting her voice, and hurried away. That night she lay in bed staring at the ceiling while Molly snored softly nearby. Her hand still tingled where it had touched his. She could still feel the warmth of his skin, the strength in his fingers, the way he looked at her like she was something precious and terrifying at once. This was dangerous. He was a duke. She was a servant. The gulf between them was not just wide, it was impossible. People did not cross such boundaries. When they tried, it ended in ruin. But even knowing that, even understanding the foolishness of it, Hattie could not stop thinking about the way Herbert's breath had caught when she touched him, the way his eyes had darkened, the way for just one moment titles and stations had seemed to disappear, leaving just a man and a woman standing too close in the golden afternoon light. Sleep did not come easily, and when it did, her dreams were filled with storm-grey eyes and the ghost of a touch that promised everything and nothing at all. In his own chambers, Herbert stood at the window overlooking the grounds. He had dismissed his valet hours ago, needing solitude. His hand still remembered the feel of hers covering it. Small, warm, certain. He was 34 years old. He had known women, beautiful women of his own class. Had been pursued by ambitious mothers with eligible daughters. None of them had ever made him feel like this. Off balance, hungry, awake in a way he had not been in years. This was madness. She was a servant. The scandal alone would destroy his reputation, his standing, everything he had worked to maintain. But when she touched him, when she looked at him with those clear, honest eyes, all of that seemed distant and unimportant. What mattered was the strange recognition he felt, like meeting someone who spoke a language he had forgotten he knew. Herbert pressed his forehead against the cool glass. He thought of her words about strength and control, trust and force. She challenged everything he believed, and instead of angering him, it fascinated him. He was in dangerous territory. He knew it. Yet he had already arranged for tomorrow's lesson, had already decided he would return, would stand close to her again, would find excuses to be near her. This would not end well. He knew that too. But knowing and caring, he was beginning to realize, were two very different things. Tomorrow. He would see her tomorrow. And that thought, improper and impossible as it was, made something in his chest tighten with anticipation. In separate rooms, separated by class and propriety and everything society held sacred, both Herbert and Hattie lay awake, thinking of a touch that lasted only seconds but changed everything. Neither slept well that night, and both knew, without speaking it aloud, that they were already falling into something neither could control and neither fully understood. The lessons had begun, but what they were truly learning had nothing to do with horses. The lessons continued for 3 days. Dawn and dusk, Hattie met Herbert in the stable. Each session brought them closer, physically and otherwise, shoulders brushing as they moved around Wildfire, hands touching when she corrected his posture, voices dropping to whispers in the intimate quiet. Herbert was changing, learning. His rigid approach softened. Wildfire responded, growing calmer each day. But something else was growing too, something neither of them named, but both felt in the charged silences, the lingering looks, the careful distance they maintained that somehow felt more intimate than touch. On the 4th morning, Hattie was polishing silver in the servants' hall when Lady Caroline appeared in the doorway. The sight of a lady in this part of the house was so unusual that all work stopped. "Leave us." Caroline's voice was cold silk. "All of you. Except her." She pointed at Hattie. The other servants fled quickly, grateful not to be the target. Molly cast Hattie a worried glance before disappearing through the door. Hattie stood, setting down her cloth. She curtsied. "My lady." Caroline moved closer, circling Hattie like a predator, assessing prey. She was beautiful in the way sharp things are beautiful. Expensive dress, perfect posture, and eyes like ice. You have been spending time with His Grace, in the stables, alone. It was not a question. Hattie's stomach twisted. She kept her voice steady. "His Grace requested lessons with Wildfire, my lady. I am simply following orders." "Orders?" Caroline laughed, but there was no warmth in it. "How convenient. Tell me, Miss Miller, do you think yourself clever? I do not understand, my lady. Do you not?" Caroline stepped closer, close enough that Hattie could smell her perfume, heavy and cloying. A servant girl, unremarkable in every way, suddenly gaining the Duke's attention, meeting him privately, making herself indispensable. "I am teaching him to handle his horse, nothing more, nothing more." Caroline's smile was poisonous. "Let me be very clear, girl. I know what you are doing. I have seen women like you before. You think if you can catch his eye, perhaps his bed, you can rise above your station, become his mistress, secure your future." Hattie's face burned. "That is not—" Silence. Caroline's voice cracked like a whip. "I am not finished. You will listen carefully because I will say this only once. If you continue these private meetings, if you continue to make a spectacle of yourself, I will ensure you are not only dismissed from Westbridge, but barred from employment in any respectable house in England." Hattie's throat tightened. "My lady, I have done nothing improper. Have you not?" Caroline leaned in, voice dropping to a venomous whisper. "You are a servant meeting alone with a duke. The impropriety is in the act itself, regardless of what occurs. And even if nothing has happened yet, appearances are everything. I can destroy you with a word. One whisper in the right ear. One suggestion that you attempted to seduce His Grace, that you stole from the house, that you engaged in immoral behavior with stable hands, but none of that is true. Truth is irrelevant." Caroline straightened, smoothing her already perfect skirt. "Who will believe you over me? A lady of standing versus a nobody with no references, no future, no prospects. You will be ruined, and not just you. Any family you have will suffer the shame. They will wonder what you did to deserve such disgrace." Tears burned behind Hattie's eyes, but she refused to let them fall. "Why? Why do you care what I do?" "Because order matters." Caroline's face hardened. "Because when servants forget their place, the entire system crumbles. And because His Grace needs a proper wife, not distractions from the lower orders. He needs to marry well, produce heirs, maintain his standing. You are nothing but an obstacle to that future. I am no threat to you, my lady." "That is correct." Caroline moved toward the door. "You are not. And you will remain not a threat by staying away from him. No more lessons. No more private meetings. If he asks, you will say you are ill. You will make yourself scarce. Do you understand?" Hattie said nothing, jaw clenched. "I asked if you understand." Caroline's voice turned sharp. "Yes, my lady." "Good." Caroline paused at the door. "One more thing. If you speak to His Grace about this conversation, I will know, and my response will be immediate and devastating. You will simply disappear from his life. Quietly. As servants should." Then she was gone, leaving only the scent of her perfume and the weight of her threats. Hattie sank into a chair, hands trembling. Molly crept back in moments later. "What did she say? Are you dismissed?" "Not yet." Hattie's voice was hollow. "But I will be if I continue the lessons." "Then you must tell the Duke. Surely he—" "No." Hattie cut her off. "If I tell him, Caroline will know. She will make good on her threats. I cannot risk it. I cannot risk my family's reputation, my future employment. I have nothing, Molly. One word from her and I have less than nothing. So what will you do?" Hattie touched her mother's brooch, drawing strength from it. "I will stay away, I will disappear as she commanded. It is the only safe choice." That evening, as dusk fell, Hattie remained in her room while Herbert waited in the stable. She sat on her bed, staring at the wall, imagining him there, wondering if he was angry at her absence, if he cared at all. In the stable, Herbert paced. Wildfire watched him with calm eyes, so different from the wild creature of a week ago. The horse was proof of Hattie's skill, her patience, her quiet strength. Where was she? He waited an hour past their usual time before admitting she was not coming. Irritation flared first, then concern. Was she ill? Had something happened? He should not care this much, should not feel this hollow disappointment. She was a servant. Missing one lesson should mean nothing, but it meant everything. Because somewhere in the past 4 days, her presence had become essential. Her voice, her gentle corrections, the way she looked at him like he was just a man, not a title, like he could be better than he was. Herbert left the stable, jaw tight. He would find out what kept her away. He would demand answers. But as he approached the house, he saw Lady Caroline on the terrace watching him with a satisfied smile. Something cold settled in his stomach. That smile. He knew it. The smile of someone who had moved pieces on a board, secured a victory. "What did you do?" The thought came unbidden but certain. He changed direction, seeking the housekeeper. "Where is Miss Miller? Is she unwell?" The housekeeper looked uncomfortable. "I believe she is in her quarters, Your Grace." She claimed a headache. A headache. Herbert did not believe it for a moment. "Send word I wish to speak with her." "Your Grace, it is not proper for—" "I did not ask for your opinion on propriety." "Send word." The housekeeper curtsied and hurried away. But when the message was delivered, Hattie sent back a simple response. She regrets she is too unwell to attend His Grace this evening. Herbert stood in his study, the note crumpling in his fist. Too unwell. Sudden illness after 4 days of perfect health. After Lady Caroline's satisfied expression, he was not a fool. Something had happened. Someone had frightened her into staying away, and he had a very clear idea of who. Rage, clean and bright, burned through him. Not just anger at Caroline's interference, but at himself. For not seeing the danger, for not protecting Hattie from the cruelty of his world, for allowing her to be vulnerable to threats he should have anticipated. He could demand answers, could confront Caroline directly. But that would only confirm suspicions, make Hattie's position worse. If he pushed too hard, the scandal would destroy her, regardless of innocence. So he did nothing. Stood in his study, hands clenched, hating his powerlessness, hating that protecting her meant staying away from her, that his world, his position, the very things that gave him power, made him helpless to help the one person who had made him feel truly seen in years. In her small room, Hattie lay in the darkness, tears finally falling. She told herself this was for the best, that the distance between them was too great to bridge, that she was foolish to imagine anything else. But her heart ached with the loss of something that never quite was but might have been. And she wondered if Herbert stood in the stable waiting, if he thought of her at all, if any of what passed between them meant anything to him beyond curiosity and convenience. She did not know that at that very moment, he stood at his window looking toward the servants' quarters, fists clenched, jaw tight, fighting every instinct that told him to go to her, to demand answers, to damn the consequences, and claim what his heart increasingly insisted was his. Neither slept that night. Both lay awake, separated by stone walls and social chasms, each aching with the absence of the other. And in that absence, the connection between them, instead of fading, only grew stronger. Distance, it seemed, could not diminish what they had begun to feel. It only made the feeling more urgent, more undeniable, and infinitely more dangerous. 3 days of silence, 3 days of Herbert searching for glimpses of Hattie in corridors, only to find she had already passed. 3 days of Hattie taking the longest routes, timing her tasks to avoid him. 3 days of Caroline's satisfied smiles. On the 4th morning, Herbert had enough. He found the housekeeper in the linen room. "Miss Miller, where is she assigned today?" The woman hesitated. "The East Wing, Your Grace. Preparing guest rooms. Send her to the library. I require assistance retrieving books from the upper shelves. Your Grace, perhaps a footman would be more—" "I said Miss Miller." His voice left no room for argument. 30 minutes later, Hattie stood in the library doorway, pale and anxious. Herbert stood by the window, hands clasped behind his back. "Close the door." "Your Grace, it is not proper." "I am aware of what is proper." "Close the door. We need to speak privately." Hattie obeyed, hands trembling. She kept her eyes down, the perfect servant. But Herbert saw the tension in her shoulders, the way she held herself like someone expecting a blow. "Look at me." His voice softened. "Please." Slowly she raised her eyes. He saw exhaustion there, and fear. "What happened? Why did you stop coming to the lessons?" "I was unwell, Your Grace. Do not lie to me." He stepped closer. "I may be many things, but I am not blind. One day we are making progress, the next you vanish. What changed?" Hattie's throat worked. "Nothing changed. I simply realized it was inappropriate for me to presume to teach Your Grace anything. I overstepped my station. Caroline spoke to you. It was not a question." Herbert watched her face carefully. "She threatened you." Hattie's eyes widened slightly. Confirmation enough. "What did she say?" Herbert's voice hardened. "Tell me exactly what she threatened. Your Grace, I cannot—" "You can, and you will." He moved closer still, close enough to see the flecks of amber in her hazel eyes. "I am ordering you as your employer. What did Lady Caroline threaten?" Hattie's composure cracked. She said she would ruin me, that she would spread rumors about impropriety, about theft, about immoral behavior, that no respectable house would employ me, that my family would bear the shame. She said I must stay away from you, or she would destroy everything I have. Herbert's jaw clenched so tight it ached. "And you believed her capable of this?" "Yes." Hattie met his eyes. "Because women like her have that power. Women like me have none. One word from her carries more weight than 1,000 truths from me." Herbert was silent for a long moment. Then he turned toward his desk, pulled out paper and pen. He wrote quickly, pressed his signet ring into wax, sealed the letter. When he turned back, his face was set with determination. "Lady Caroline no longer has authority over you. I have just written to the housekeeper making clear that you answer only to me. Any attempt to dismiss you must go through me directly. Any rumors spread about you will be investigated thoroughly and their source punished. Your Grace, that will only make things worse. She will do nothing. Because I am making clear right now that you are under my direct protection." He held her gaze. "And because I am going to her chambers immediately to make equally clear that if she interferes with you again, she will no longer be welcome at Westbridge. Ever. You cannot do that. She is a lady of rank. I am a duke." Herbert's voice was steel. "And this is my home. She threatened someone under my roof, under my employ. That is unacceptable, regardless of her station or yours." Hattie stared at him. "Why? Why risk your reputation, your standing for a servant?" Herbert closed the distance between them. "Because what we have been doing in that stable matters. Because you see me as more than a title. Because when I am with you, I remember what it means to be human rather than just powerful. He raised his hand slowly, giving her time to move away. When she did not, he touched her cheek with the backs of his fingers, the lightest brush of contact that sent fire through them both. Because I cannot stand the thought of you afraid, of you hiding from me, of Caroline or anyone else making you feel small. Hattie's breath caught. Her skin burned where he touched her. Your Grace? Herbert. When we are alone, call me Herbert. I cannot. That would be honest? He smiled slightly sadly. Yes, it would be honest. And we have been dishonest long enough, have we not? Pretending this is only about horses. Pretending we do not think of each other when we should not. Hattie's eyes filled with tears. This cannot happen. You know it cannot. The distance between us is just distance. Herbert's thumb traced her cheekbone. I am tired of distance. Tired of pretending I do not wait for dawn just to see you, that I do not listen for your voice in the halls, that I did not spend 3 days feeling hollow because you were gone. Stop, Hattie whispered. Please stop. Why? Because it frightens you? It frightens me too. He leaned closer, his face inches from hers. I am not supposed to feel this, not for you, not like this, but I do. The library felt impossibly small. Hattie could see the pulse at his throat, could smell sandalwood and something uniquely him. Her heart hammered against her ribs. If I have been alone in this feeling, tell me now. Herbert's voice dropped to barely more than breath. Tell me you feel nothing, and I will step away. I will keep my distance. But if you feel even a fraction of what I feel, I do. The words escaped before Hattie could stop them. God help me, I do. Something ignited in Herbert's eyes. He cupped her face with both hands, thumbs stroking her cheeks. Hattie. Her name was a prayer on his lips. This will ruin me, she whispered. Then we will both be ruined, because I cannot let you go. He lowered his head slowly, giving her every chance to pull away. Hattie knew she should, knew this was madness. But when his lips touched hers, soft and questioning, every rational thought scattered. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, a question being asked and answered. Then Hattie's hands came up to grip his shirt, and Herbert pulled her closer, deepening the kiss with sudden hunger. Heat flooded through Hattie. She had been kissed before, clumsy stolen moments behind barns with village boys. This was nothing like that. This was devastating. Herbert kissed her like she was air and he was drowning, like she was the answer to questions he had been asking his entire life. His hands slid from her face to her waist, pulling her flush against him. Hattie gasped at the contact, at feeling the hard planes of his body against her softer curves. Herbert took advantage of her parted lips, tasting her deeper, and a sound escaped him, something between a groan and a sigh that made Hattie's knees weak. Before I continue with the rest of this chapter, I want to ask you something. If you are enjoying this journey of Hattie and Herbert, if their forbidden connection is pulling you in, would you subscribe to the channel? It means the world to know you are here with them. And tell me, do you think Herbert can truly protect Hattie from the scandal that is coming, or is their love doomed from the start? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Now, back to our story. They broke apart, breathing hard. Herbert rested his forehead against hers, eyes closed, hands still gripping her waist like she might disappear. We cannot do this here, Hattie breathed. Someone could come in. I know. Herbert's voice was rough. But I am finding it very difficult to care. You must care, we both must. Hattie forced herself to step back, though it felt like tearing. This is already more risk than we should take. Herbert opened his eyes. They were dark with desire and something deeper. Come to the stable tonight. After the house sleeps, we need to talk, properly, without fear of interruption. Herbert, please. He caught her hand, brought it to his lips. I need to know you are real, that this is real. 3 days without you nearly drove me mad. Do not make me endure more. Hattie looked at their joined hands. This was insanity. Every moment with him pulled her deeper into impossible territory, but she could no more deny him than stop breathing. Tonight, she agreed quietly, but we cannot let anyone see. They will not. I will make certain of it. Hattie slipped from the library, heart racing, lips still tingling from his kiss. In the corridor, she touched her fingers to her mouth, still feeling him there, still tasting him. She was falling, had already fallen, into something that would either save her or destroy her completely. That evening, Herbert sought out Lady Caroline in the drawing room. His rage had cooled to something colder and more dangerous. Lady Caroline. A word. In private. Caroline followed him to his study, confident as ever. But when he closed the door and turned to face her, something in his expression made her confidence waver. You spoke to Miss Miller. You threatened her. I merely reminded a servant of her proper place, Your Grace. You told her you would ruin her reputation and bar her from future employment if she continued assisting me with wildfire. Herbert's voice was arctic. You overstepped, Caroline. Dramatically. I was protecting your interests. No. Herbert cut her off. You were protecting your own perceived interests. But hear me clearly. Miss Miller is under my direct protection. Any attempt to harm her, to spread rumors about her, or to interfere with her employment will result in your immediate expulsion from Westbridge and my formal censure. I will make clear to every household in England that you are not to be trusted. Caroline paled. You would ruin me over a servant girl. I would ruin anyone who threatens people under my protection. His eyes were hard. Your rank does not grant you permission to be cruel. Leave Miss Miller alone, is that understood? Caroline's hands trembled with rage. She is making a fool of you. Cannot you see that? The only fool I see is standing before me. Herbert moved to the door, opened it. This conversation is over. And Caroline, if I hear you have spoken one word against Miss Miller, you will never set foot in this house again. Caroline left, spine rigid with fury. But for the first time, genuine fear flickered beneath her anger. The Duke had never spoken to her that way, never chosen anyone over his social obligations. The servant girl had gotten under his skin, and that made her more dangerous than Caroline had anticipated. She would need a new strategy, a better one, because this was far from over. As midnight approached, Herbert stood in the stable, waiting, wondering if Hattie would come, wondering what he would do if she did not. Then he heard soft footsteps, turned, and there she was, wrapped in a dark cloak, eyes wide and nervous and beautiful. You came. I should not have. But you did. Herbert held out his hand. That matters more than should. Hattie took his hand, and whatever came next, whatever scandal or ruin awaited them, in that moment it felt inevitable and absolutely right. The real conversation was just beginning, and neither of them was prepared for where it would lead. The stable was dark except for a single lantern. Wildfire dozed peacefully. Herbert stood waiting, tension in every line. When Hattie entered, he took both her hands. I spoke to Caroline. She will not trouble you again. You should not have risked. Let me protect you. Let me use my power for something that matters. She looked up at him. You are changing everything. Good. His lips quirked. Mine has been upside down since I watched you tame a wild horse with nothing but patience. They stood close, hands joined. What are we doing? Hattie whispered. Where can this lead? I do not know. I only know I cannot stay away from you. He cupped her cheek. When I touch you, I feel more alive than I have in years. This will end badly. Perhaps. But would you rather live safely and never know, or risk everything for something real? Before Hattie could answer, voices carried across the yard. Both froze. Someone is coming. The stable doors swung open. Lantern light flooded in with Lady Caroline's triumphant voice. I tell you, I saw someone enter, a woman skulking about. Behind Caroline came 3 guests, carefully selected gossips. Herbert realized with cold fury. This was no accident. Caroline had orchestrated this perfectly. Your Grace. Caroline's hand flew to her throat. And Miss Miller. How extraordinary to find you both here, at midnight, alone. The guests stared. One woman gasped. Herbert stepped forward, placing himself before Hattie. Lady Caroline, I was not aware I required permission to visit my own stables, but surely you see how this appears. A duke and a servant girl, meeting secretly. One cannot help but draw conclusions. Then one should practice restraint. Miss Miller was assisting me with wildfire, nothing more. At midnight, a gentleman spoke. Unchaperoned? Your Grace, surely you recognize the impropriety. What I recognize is interference in my private affairs. You were brought here under false pretenses to witness something deliberately manufactured. I suggest you return to the house. Caroline's laugh was brittle. I am trying to protect your reputation. This girl is clearly seducing you, manipulating you. Enough. Herbert's voice cracked like a whip. Miss Miller has done nothing but serve with honor. You have spied, threatened, and attempted to publicly humiliate us both. If anyone's character is in question, it is yours. The guests shifted uncomfortably. Hattie felt the weight of their stares, the certainty that she would be branded as a seductress regardless of truth. Perhaps His Grace is too much of a gentleman to admit he has been compromised. Caroline pressed, but we all see the truth. This girl has ensnared him. Stop! Hattie's voice cut through. Everyone turned. Caroline expected cowering. Instead, Hattie stood straighter, touching the brooch at her collar. I have done nothing wrong. Hattie's voice was steady. I have not schemed or seduced or manipulated. All I have done is treat His Grace with honesty and respect. If that is considered inappropriate, then the failing lies not with me, but with a society that values artifice over authenticity. How dare you? Caroline began. No. Hattie looked directly at her. How dare you threaten me for being kind to a horse and honest with a man? How dare you manufacture scandal because you fear anything that does not fit your narrow view? She turned to the guests. I know what you think. A servant with ambitions. But I never asked for his attention. I never sought anything beyond doing my work. And if treating him as a human being rather than a title makes me guilty, then I am guilty. But I am not ashamed. Silence except for horses shifting. Herbert stared at Hattie with awe. She is right. He moved beside her. Miss Miller has shown more courage and honor in 1 minute than some display in a lifetime. She treated me with honesty when surrounded by people who tell me only what I wish to hear. She taught me that true strength comes from earning trust, not forcing submission. And yes, I value her presence. I value her character. If that scandalizes you, leave Westbridge immediately. Your Grace. The gentleman spoke carefully. You must understand the position this puts you in. If word spreads, then let it spread. I will not apologize for recognizing worth where I find it, regardless of station. You are making a terrible mistake, Caroline hissed. She will ruin you. The only mistake I made was not recognizing your true nature sooner. Herbert gestured toward the door. Leave. All of you. The guests filed out reluctantly. Caroline was last, face twisted with fury. This is not over. You have embarrassed me. Then we have something in common. Herbert met her gaze coldly. Because you threatened someone I care about, and that will absolutely not stand. Caroline swept out, eyes promising vengeance. When the stable was empty, Hattie began trembling. I am ruined. By morning, every house will hear I tried to seduce a duke. No one will employ me. Herbert caught her shoulders. You are not ruined. You were magnificent. Tears spilled. You do not understand. For people like me, reputation is everything. Then you will stay here, under my protection. I will not allow them to drive you away. Herbert, you cannot. I can. And I will. Because what you said, the courage you showed, that is who you are. I will not let Caroline destroy you for it. Why? Why risk so much? Herbert wiped away her tears. Because somewhere between watching you gentle a wild horse and now, I stopped being able to imagine my life without you. Because you make me want to be better. Because when I look at you, I see not a servant or a scandal, but simply the most remarkable woman I have ever known. The words hung weighted with meaning. Hattie's breath caught. Herbert, Shh. He pressed his forehead to hers. We do not have to name this tonight. We just have to survive this storm together. Together. Impossible and essential at once. Herbert walked Hattie back through shadows. At the servant's entrance, he caught her hand. Be brave a little longer. This is not over yet. Hattie nodded and slipped inside. In her room, Molly waited. I heard. Caroline is telling everyone you seduced the Duke. Let her talk. Hattie's voice was tired but steady. The truth is simpler and more complicated, but I will not run. Not anymore. What changed? Hattie touched her brooch. I remembered that strength does not always look like power. Sometimes it looks like standing your ground when everything wants you to flee. Sometimes it looks like choosing honesty even when lies would be safer. She climbed into bed, exhausted but strangely calm. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. But tonight she had spoken her truth, had not cowered, and Herbert had stood beside her. Whatever came next, at least she would face it, having discovered her own courage. In his chambers, Herbert watched the moon. He had crossed a line tonight, publicly defended Hattie in a way that invited scandal. There would be consequences. But as he remembered the way she stood tall, voice unwavering despite every reason to be afraid, he could not regret it. She was worth the scandal, worth the whispers, worth whatever price society demanded. He just hoped, when the full cost became clear, she would still feel the same. The battle lines were drawn, and morning would reveal just how fierce the coming war would be. The harvest ball arrived like a storm. For 3 days, Westbridge Hall transformed. Servants polished until surfaces gleamed. Flowers arrived by the carriage load. Musicians rehearsed. The kitchen worked around the clock. Hattie moved through it all in a daze. Since the stable incident, whispers followed her everywhere. The gossip had spread. Lady Caroline had ensured everyone knew, but Herbert kept his word. When the housekeeper tried reassigning Hattie to the scullery, his direct order countermanded it. His message was clear. She had his protection. 2 days before the ball, Molly burst into their room. "Hattie, the dressmaker is here. Asking for you." "What?" She says, "His Grace commissioned a gown. For you. For the ball." The dressmaker showed Hattie the most beautiful dress she had ever seen. Deep emerald green silk that shimmered in the light. Simple but exquisite. His Grace was very specific about the color. Said it would complement your eyes perfectly. Hattie's hands trembled. "I cannot accept this. His Grace anticipated you might say that. He said to tell you that you already showed courage once. He is asking you to be brave one more time." That evening, Herbert found Hattie in the garden. "You sent me a dress." "I did. Herbert, I cannot attend as a guest. The scandal will happen whether you attend or not. The difference is whether you hide or face it directly. You are asking me to walk into a room full of people who think I am trying to seduce you. I am asking you to walk in as my invited guest, to show them that I choose you, that your worth is not determined by birth but by character. You are going to ruin yourself for me. Perhaps. Or perhaps I am finally becoming the man I was meant to be." Herbert took her hand. "The man you helped me see I could be. Why are you doing this? Because you stood in a stable and refused to be diminished. Because you taught me that strength is about connection, not control." He kissed her knuckles. "Because when I imagine the future, you are in it. And I am tired of pretending otherwise." The night of the ball arrived. Molly helped Hattie dress. "You look like a duchess already." Hattie stared at her reflection. The emerald gown transformed her. She looked like someone who belonged in ballrooms. She touched her mother's brooch, her anchor. The ballroom was full when the announcement came. Miss Hattie Miller. Conversation died. Every head turned. Hattie stood at the top of the staircase, heart hammering. Then she saw Herbert at the bottom, waiting, his eyes steady, certain, offering strength. Hattie descended slowly. Whispers erupted. She saw shock, disapproval. Lady Caroline stood near the windows, face white with rage. Herbert met her at the bottom. He bowed, then extended his hand. "Miss Miller, you look exquisite. Your Grace, you are certain about this?" "Absolutely." He led her to the center. Then, loud enough for all to hear, he spoke. "My friends, for too long I believed worth was measured by title and property. That strength meant dominance. I was wrong." He looked at Hattie. "This woman taught me that true strength is found in gentleness, that courage is standing tall when society demands you bow, that worth has nothing to do with where you were born, and everything to do with who you choose to be." Gasps rippled through the crowd. "Some of you know Miss Miller as a servant. But I know her as someone who speaks truth when surrounded by flattery, who shows kindness when everyone else shows cruelty, who demonstrated more honor in one moment than most display in a lifetime. I am honored to have her as my guest tonight, and I ask that you receive her with the respect she deserves. Silence, heavy. Then an elderly duchess began to applaud. Slowly, a few others joined. Not everyone, but enough. Herbert led Hattie to the dance floor. The musicians began a waltz. I have never danced like this. I do not know the steps. Then let me lead you, just follow, trust me. The music swelled. Herbert moved and Hattie followed, stumbling at first, then finding rhythm. His hand at her waist was firm and warm. His eyes never left hers. Around them the ballroom faded, just the two of them moving together. You are doing perfectly. I'm terrified. I know. But you are here anyway. That is what courage looks like. They turned, catching their reflection. They looked right together. Herbert. What happens after tonight I do not know, but I know I do not want a life without you in it. The dance ended. Scattered applause. The evening wore on. Hattie grew more comfortable, though never entirely at ease. She danced with Herbert, twice more scandalous by society standards. Lady Caroline left early, unable to watch her plan fail. Others followed, but enough remained. As midnight approached, Herbert found Hattie on the terrace. You survived. Barely. She laughed shakily. That was terrifying. You were magnificent. Herbert turned to face her. Hattie, I need to tell you something. Her heart stuttered. What? Tonight was not just about proving a point. It was about showing you that I am serious, that this matters more to me than reputation or propriety. Herbert, I am falling in love with you. The words hung in the night air. I know the obstacles, but I needed you to know. This is not passing fancy. This is real. Hattie's eyes filled with tears. You barely know me. I know that you are kind when you could be bitter, strong when you could be broken, honest when you could manipulate. He cupped her face. I know my world was black and white until you walked into it and showed me color. That is enough. This will cost you everything. Then everything is a price I am willing to pay. His forehead touched hers. What about you? What do you feel? Hattie closed her eyes, tears spilling. I feel terrified. I feel like I am falling with no ground beneath me. I feel like every moment with you is simultaneously the best and worst decision of my life. She opened her eyes. And I feel like I am falling in love with you too. God help me. I am. Herbert's breath caught. Then he kissed her, tender and desperate, pouring everything he could not say into the press of lips, the touch of hands. When they broke apart, both were shaking. What do we do now? We face tomorrow together. Herbert kissed her forehead. And whatever comes after. Inside, the ball continued. Music drifted through open doors. Unaware that on the terrace, a duke and a servant had just chosen each other, consequences be damned. It was reckless, dangerous, absolutely impossible by every social standard, and it was the most real thing either of them had ever felt. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight, under the stars, they had each other, and for now, that was enough. The ballroom gradually emptied as guests departed, some with warm farewells, others with cold disapproval. Hattie felt the weight of both, but Herbert's hand at the small of her back steadied her through every goodbye. When the last carriage rolled away, the house fell into exhausted quiet. Servants cleared glasses and plates. Musicians packed instruments. The magic of the evening dissolved into the mundane work of cleanup. Hattie moved to help, instinct pulling her toward familiar duties. No. Herbert caught her hand gently. Not tonight. Tonight you are a guest, not a servant. But tomorrow I will be a servant again. Reality pressed in. Tonight was beautiful, Herbert, but it does not change what I am, what we are. What we are is two people who found each other against all odds. He drew her away from the ballroom down a quiet corridor toward the library. Come with me, please. Just for a little while longer, let tonight be real. The library was dark except for embers glowing in the fireplace. Herbert lit a single lamp, casting warm golden light across the leather chairs and book-lined walls. This room felt safe, separate from the judgment of the world outside. He poured 2 glasses of wine, handed one to Hattie. To courage. She took the glass, fingers trembling. To foolishness. Because that is what this is it not? Beautiful, impossible foolishness. Then, I will be a fool gladly. Herbert set down his glass, moved closer. Hattie, what I said on the terrace, I know. She set her own glass aside. I know what you said and I know what I said, but Herbert, saying it and living it are different things. Tomorrow the guests will spread stories. Your reputation will suffer. People will say I bewitched you, trapped you, that I am using you for position and money. Let them say it. You do not understand what it means to be talked about that way. To have people assume the worst about your character, your intentions. Do I not? Herbert's smile was sad. I have spent my entire life being talked about, judged, expected to be a certain way, marry a certain type of woman, produce heirs like breeding stock, every action scrutinized, every choice measured against impossible standards. That is different. You have power, protection. And I am using it to protect you. He took her hands. I am using it to choose a life that is mine, not one dictated by people who measure worth in bloodlines and bank balances. Hattie looked at their joined hands. His so much larger than hers, rougher than she expected for a gentleman. Capable hands that had learned gentleness. I am frightened. Her voice broke. I am so frightened of what loving you will cost, of losing myself, of being the woman who ruined a duke. Herbert pulled her closer, until they stood chest to chest, breathing the same air. You could never ruin me. You are saving me from a life half-lived, from being a title instead of a man. His hand came up to cup her face, thumb tracing her cheekbone. When I look at you, I see home. I see peace. I see the person I was meant to become. Tears slipped down Hattie's cheeks. Herbert, Shh. He wiped away her tears. No more fear. Not tonight. Tonight let us just be Herbert and Hattie, not duke and servant, just us. He lowered his head slowly, giving her time to pull away. When his lips met hers, it was gentle at first, questioning, seeking permission. Hattie answered by rising on her toes, pressing closer, her hands sliding up his chest to his shoulders. The kiss deepened. Herbert's arms wrapped around her waist, pulling her flush against him. She felt the solid warmth of him, the strength in his body tempered by tenderness in his touch. His lips moved from her mouth to her jaw, trailing kisses down the sensitive column of her neck. Hattie gasped, fingers threading into his hair. The sensation was overwhelming, fire spreading through her veins. Tell me to stop. Herbert's voice was rough against her skin. If you want me to stop, tell me now. Do not stop. The words came out breathless. Please do not stop. Herbert lifted his head, looking into her eyes. His pupils were dark with desire, but something else lived there too. Reverence. Wonder. Are you certain? Because once we cross this line, I am certain. Hattie cupped his face. I do not know what tomorrow brings. But I know I want tonight. I want you, not as a duke, just as Herbert, the man who learned to be gentle, who chose me when he could have anyone. Then you have me. Herbert kissed her again, deeper this time, all restraint crumbling, completely, irrevocably. He guided her to the sofa near the fireplace. They sank into the cushions together, hands exploring, discovering. Herbert's fingers found the pins in her hair, removing them one by one until dark curls tumbled free. He buried his face in them, breathing her in. You are so beautiful. His voice was reverent. I have thought about this, about you, every night since that first evening in the stable. I thought I imagined it. Hattie's hands worked at the buttons of his waistcoat. The way you looked at me. I told myself I was seeing things that were not there. They were there. Herbert shrugged out of the waistcoat, then his jacket. I was terrified of them, but they were there. This hunger, this need. His hands found the fastenings of her dress. He moved slowly, deliberately, giving her every opportunity to change her mind. Each button undone revealed more skin, and Herbert kissed each new inch as it appeared. Hattie trembled beneath his attention, overwhelmed by sensation, by the careful worship in his touch. "You are shaking." He paused. "Are you cold?" "No." She pulled him back to her. "I am nervous. I have never... That is, I am not. I know." Herbert's eyes were soft. "Neither am I. Not like this. Not with someone who matters." He kissed her slowly, thoroughly, until the nervousness eased into anticipation. His hands slid the dress from her shoulders, revealing the simple chemise beneath. No fancy undergarments like the ladies wore, just plain cotton that suddenly felt inadequate. Herbert seemed to read her thoughts. "You are perfect, exactly as you are." His shirt joined the pile of discarded clothing. Hattie's breath caught at the sight of him, all lean muscle and warm skin. She placed her palm flat against his chest, feeling his heartbeat racing as fast as hers. They came together again, skin against skin, and the world narrowed to just this. His mouth on hers, then trailing down her throat to her collarbone, her hands exploring the planes of his back, the firelight playing across their bodies as they learned each other in whispers and touches and sighs. Herbert took his time, refusing to rush despite the desire clearly coiling through him. He touched her like she was precious, irreplaceable. His fingers traced patterns on her skin that made her gasp and arch into him. His mouth followed the path of his hands, discovering what made her breath catch, what made her say his name in that breathless way that drove him wild. When they finally joined, it was with tangled breaths and clasped hands. Hattie felt a moment of discomfort that Herbert soothed with stillness and soft words and kisses that made her forget everything but the feeling of being completely connected to him. They moved together slowly at first, finding rhythm, learning what pleased. Herbert's forehead pressed to hers, their eyes locked, seeing each other fully. No masks, no pretense, just truth between them, raw and vulnerable and beautiful. "I love you." Herbert breathed the words between kisses. "I love you. I love you." Hattie could not speak past the emotion choking her, but she showed him with her body, with the way she held him, with the tears that slipped down her temples. When pleasure crested, it swept through them both, and Herbert caught her cry with his mouth, swallowing the sound as they shattered and remade themselves in each other's arms. After, they lay tangled together on the sofa, Herbert's shirt covering them both. Hattie's head rested on his chest, listening to his heartbeat slow. His fingers traced idle patterns on her bare shoulder. "I should regret this." Hattie's voice was quiet. "But I do not." "Good." Herbert kissed the top of her head. "Because I certainly do not." "What happens now?" "Now we face whatever comes together." He tilted her face up to his. "I meant what I said. I love you, Hattie Miller, and I intend to find a way to make this work. Consequences be damned. They do not allow dukes to marry servants. Then perhaps I need to change the rules." Herbert's jaw was set with determination. Or break them entirely. They stayed there until the fire burned to embers and the lamp guttered low. Then Herbert insisted on walking Hattie back to the servants' quarters, propriety finally asserting itself despite everything already shared. At the door to her room he kissed her once more. Soft, promising. "Sleep well." Hattie touched his face. "You too." She slipped inside, closing the door between them. Molly was asleep, snoring softly. Hattie undressed quietly, putting away the beautiful green dress and climbed into her narrow bed. Her body still hummed with the memory of his touch. Her heart still raced with the enormity of what they had done. She had given herself to him completely, knowing it changed everything, knowing there was no going back. But lying there in the darkness, she felt no regret, only certainty that whatever tomorrow brought, tonight had been worth it. That loving Herbert Caldwell, impossible as it was, felt like the truest thing she had ever done. In his chambers, Herbert stood at the window, unable to sleep. His body still remembered the feel of her, the taste of her skin, the sounds she made when he touched her just right. But more than physical memory, his heart held something new, hope. That love could transcend station, that two people from different worlds could find a way to build something real. He did not know how yet, did not have answers to the 100 obstacles that stood between them, but he knew with absolute certainty that he would find a way. Because losing Hattie now, after tonight, after everything, was simply not an option he would accept. Tomorrow would bring challenges, but tonight had brought something rarer: truth, connection, love given and received without reservation. And that, Herbert thought as dawn began to break, was worth fighting for. Morning came too quickly. Hattie woke to Molly shaking her shoulder urgently. "Hattie, wake up. Something is happening. The house is in chaos." Hattie sat up, disoriented. "What do you mean?" "Guests are arriving. Unexpected ones. And His Grace has called for a gathering in the main hall. Everyone, servants, guests, everyone." Hattie's stomach twisted. She dressed quickly, her body still tender from the night before, marked by Herbert's touch in ways only she could feel. She pinned on her mother's brooch with trembling fingers. Whatever was coming, she would need its strength. The main hall was already crowded when Hattie arrived. Servants lined the walls, whispering anxiously. The remaining guests from the ball clustered in confused groups. More carriages were arriving outside, drawn by urgent messages sent at dawn. Then Herbert entered. He wore formal attire, every inch the Duke. But when his eyes found Hattie across the room, they softened. That look said everything. Last night was real. What they shared mattered. He moved to the center of the hall, commanding instant silence. "Thank you for gathering on such short notice. I have an announcement that could not wait." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Hattie's heart hammered. What was he doing? "For too long I have lived according to expectations set by others. I married duty over desire, maintained appearances over authenticity, valued tradition over truth." His voice carried clearly. "But recent events have shown me the emptiness of such a life, and one person in particular has taught me what truly matters." He turned, extending his hand toward Hattie. "Miss Miller, please join me." Hattie froze. Every eye turned to her. She saw shock, disapproval, curiosity, felt the weight of judgment pressing down. Her feet would not move. "Please." Herbert's voice was gentle but firm. "I need you here beside me." Somehow, Hattie made her legs work. She crossed the hall, acutely aware of her plain servant's dress among all the finery. When she reached Herbert, his hand closed around hers, warm and steady. "Many of you know Miss Miller as a servant in this house." Herbert addressed the crowd. "But I know her as the woman who taught me that true nobility has nothing to do with birth. That courage is not found in dominance, but in gentleness. That strength means listening, not commanding. Your Grace." An older gentleman stepped forward. "Surely you are not suggesting—" "I am not suggesting, I am declaring." Herbert's voice hardened. "Miss Miller has shown more character, honor, and grace than most people born to privilege ever display. She has my respect, my admiration, and my love." Gasps erupted. Someone cried out in protest. Hattie's hand tightened on Herbert's, panic rising. "Herbert, you cannot—" "I can." He turned to face her fully, still holding her hand. "And I will. Because hiding what we are to each other serves no one. Because I am tired of living by rules that value bloodlines over humanity." He sank to one knee. The entire room seemed to stop breathing. "Hattie Miller." His voice was steady, clear. "You have taught me what it means to be truly seen, to be valued for who I am, rather than what I possess. You have shown me that love is not about control or possession, but about trust and partnership." "Herbert." Tears spilled down Hattie's cheeks. "Stand up, please." "Not until you answer me." He pulled a ring from his pocket. Simple compared to the jewels most ladies wore, but beautiful in its elegance. A single emerald surrounded by small diamonds. "Will you marry me? Will you be my wife, my partner, my equal in all things that matter?" Silence. Complete and absolute. Hattie stared at him. This man kneeling before her in front of everyone who mattered in his world. This man who was offering her everything while risking the same. "You will lose everything." Her voice broke. "Your position, your standing. I will lose nothing that matters." Herbert's eyes were fierce. "With you I gain everything. Without you I have nothing but empty titles and hollow respect. So I ask again, will you marry me?" Around them, protests erupted. "This is madness. A duke cannot marry a servant. The scandal will destroy you both. Think of your family name." But through it all, Herbert did not look away from Hattie, did not waver, simply waited for her answer with absolute faith that she would choose him as he had chosen her. Hattie thought of her mother, of the small brooch she wore, of the woman who taught her that worth was not given by others but claimed by yourself. That courage was not the absence of fear but the decision to act despite it. Yes, the word came out barely above a whisper, then louder, stronger. Yes, I will marry you. Herbert surged to his feet, pulling Hattie into his arms. The kiss was brief but profound. When they broke apart, both were crying. The hall erupted into chaos. Some guests stormed out immediately, declaring they would never set foot in Westbridge again. Others stood stunned, unable to process what they had witnessed. A few, a precious few, began to applaud. The elderly Duchess, who had first clapped at the ball, stepped forward. "Your Grace, Miss Miller." That took more courage than most will ever display. "You have my support." Others slowly joined. Not many, perhaps a third of those present, but enough to matter. Enough to show that not everyone valued tradition over humanity. Those who remained after the exodus gathered around Herbert and Hattie, offering congratulations, asking questions, processing this unprecedented decision. But through it all, Herbert kept Hattie close, his hand at her waist, his presence a shield against the judgment still lingering in disapproving stares. As the crowd finally dispersed, some to spread gossip, others to write letters of support or condemnation, Herbert drew Hattie aside into an empty sitting room. "Are you all right?" He cupped her face gently. "I do not know." Hattie laughed shakily. "I feel like I am dreaming, or losing my mind. Did you really just propose to me in front of everyone?" "I did." Herbert kissed her forehead. "And you said yes. You cannot take it back now. I do not want to take it back." Hattie gripped his shirt. "But Herbert, the reality of this, we will face it together." He tilted her face up. "Not everyone will accept us. Some doors will close, but new ones will open, and we will build a life that is ours, not dictated by people who measure worth in the wrong ways." "What about heirs? Succession? All the things dukes are supposed to care about. We will have children if we are blessed with them." Herbert smiled. "And they will be raised to value character over class, to see people as people, not ranks and stations. They will have your kindness and my resources. They will change this world more than I ever could alone. You sound so certain. I am certain about you." Herbert kissed her softly. "The rest we will figure out as we go." That evening, as word spread across England of the Duke who proposed to a servant, reactions varied wildly. Some called it the greatest scandal of the century. Others saw it as romantic madness. A few recognized it as something more, the beginning of change. In Westbridge Hall, Herbert hosted a small dinner for those who stayed. The atmosphere was strange, uncertain, but also electric with possibility. Conversations happened that never would have before. Lines were being redrawn. Hattie sat beside Herbert at the table, no longer servant, but not yet fully accepted as Duchess, existing in that strange space between worlds. But Herbert's hand found hers beneath the table, squeezing gently, reminding her she was not alone. After dinner, they walked the grounds together. The autumn air was crisp, stars brilliant overhead. "Regrets yet?" Herbert asked. "Hundreds." Hattie laughed. "And none at all somehow." "That seems about right." He pulled her close. "This will not be easy. You know that." "I know, but easy is not the same as right." "No." Herbert kissed the top of her head. "It is not." They stood there in the darkness, holding each other, knowing that tomorrow would bring new battles. Letters of outrage, social censure, families choosing sides. Some of Herbert's peers would cut him entirely. Hattie would face cruelty from those who saw her as an opportunist. But they would face it together. Two people from different worlds who found something rare enough to fight for. Love that transcended station. Connection that mattered more than propriety. The future was uncertain. The path ahead rough and unmarked. But as they stood beneath the stars, arms around each other, both felt something unexpected. Hope. That change was possible. That love could win. That two people brave enough to choose each other could begin to reshape a world that desperately needed reshaping. It would not be easy, but perhaps, they thought, The best things never were. Tomorrow would bring its challenges. But tonight, engaged and committed and absolutely certain despite every obstacle, they had each other. And that was everything. Winter came to Westbridge Hall like a blessing. Snow covered the grounds in pristine, white, softening edges, making everything quiet and new. Inside, fires burned in every hearth, casting warmth against the cold. 6 months had passed since the proposal that shocked England. 6 months of adjustment, challenge, and unexpected grace. Hattie stood in the portrait gallery, one hand resting on the gentle swell of her belly. 5 months along, carrying the air everyone had opinions about. Some said the child would be tainted by common blood. Others said it would bridge 2 worlds. Hattie tried not to listen to either extreme. She studied the new portrait hanging prominently on the wall. The artist had captured something true. Herbert stood tall, but not rigid, one hand resting on Wildfire's neck. The horse was calm, alert, trusting. And beside them both, Hattie in her emerald dress, one hand touching the horse, the other held by Herbert. Equal. Partners. The Duke's eyes in the portrait were different from older paintings, softer, more human. The artist had seen the change in him and immortalized it. Beautiful, is it not? Hattie turned. Herbert approached, snow still dusting his shoulders from riding the estate with the land steward. He had been visiting tenants, listening to concerns, implementing changes, becoming the kind of duke who led through service rather than dominance. It is strange seeing myself on these walls. Hattie touched her brooch, still pinned at her collar even now, among all these noble faces. Your face belongs here more than most. Herbert wrapped his arms around her from behind, hands covering hers on her belly. You have more nobility in your smallest gesture than generations of title holders combined. You are biased, completely. He kissed her temple. How are you feeling? Is the baby active today? Like he is training for battle? Hattie laughed softly. Or she is. We shall see. Either way, they will be extraordinary. Herbert turned her to face him. They will have your strength and courage. They will know that worth is earned, not inherited. And they will have your resources and position to actually change things. Precisely. Herbert's smile was warm. Together we will raise someone who understands both worlds, who can move between them with grace. The past months had not been easy. Many of Herbert's peers had cut him socially. Invitations stopped. Some families forbade their members from visiting Westbridge. The scandal was immense, talked about in every drawing room across England. But other things happened too. Unexpected alliances formed. Progressive thinkers reached out, seeing in Herbert's choice a harbinger of necessary change. Younger nobility, tired of rigid traditions, found courage in his example. Letters arrived from people they had never met, sharing stories of their own struggles against social expectations, and Westbridge itself transformed. Herbert implemented reforms, better wages for servants, regular days off, education opportunities for staff children. The boundaries between upstairs and downstairs, while still existing, became less impermeable. Respect flowed both directions. Some servants left, unable to adjust to a duchess who had scrubbed floors beside them, but most stayed, finding dignity in the new order. Molly became Hattie's lady's maid and closest confidant. The stablemaster took pride in Wildfire's transformation, now the calmest horse on the estate. Come. Herbert took Hattie's hand. I want to show you something. He led her through the house to his study. On the desk lay papers, official-looking documents with seals and signatures. What is this? Plans. Herbert's eyes gleamed with excitement. For a school. Here on the estate, free education for tenant children and village families, reading, writing, mathematics, skills that will give them choices beyond what their parents' stations allowed. Hattie's throat tightened. Herbert, this is your influence. He cupped her face. You showed me that intelligence and capability exist everywhere, not just in noble bloodlines. That potential is wasted when people are trapped by circumstances of birth. This school will not solve everything, but it is a start. We are going to change the world, Hattie whispered. We are going to try. Herbert kissed her softly. One small choice at a time. The way you changed me. Patiently, persistently, with kindness instead of force. That evening they walked the snowy grounds together as they often did, their breath misted in the cold air. Wildfire grazed peacefully in his paddock, no longer the terrified, aggressive creature from 6 months ago. "Do you remember that first day?" Hattie asked. "When you ordered me to ride him, expecting me to fall?" Herbert's expression turned rueful. "I was cruel, arrogant, so certain that power meant making others submit. You were what you were taught to be. That does not excuse it." Herbert stopped walking, turning to face her. "I humiliated you in front of everyone because I could, because I thought that was what strength looked like. And now? Now I know that true strength does not humiliate. It uplifts. It listens. It makes space for others to be strong too." Herbert took both her hands. "You taught me that, not through submission but through example. You never bowed to me in spirit, even when you had to curtsy. I was terrified, but not defeated. That was what captured me. Your refusal to be diminished even when everything in your world told you that you should be." Snow began falling again, soft flakes catching in Hattie's hair. Herbert brushed them away gently. "I thought you would fall from that horse," he said quietly. "I laughed about it, bet on it, made entertainment of what I thought would be your failure. I know. Instead, you rose. You showed everyone, including me, that there are different kinds of strength, different ways to lead, different measures of worth. You have spent 6 months apologizing for that day." Hattie smiled. "Perhaps it is time to forgive yourself. You are not that man anymore, because of you." "No." Hattie pressed her hand to his chest. "Because you chose to change. I only showed you it was possible. You did the hard work of becoming someone new." They stood there in the falling snow, two people who should never have met, should never have loved, should never have built a life together. But they had, against all advice, all social pressure, all reasonable objection. And they were happy, not perfectly, not without struggle, but genuinely, deeply happy. Inside, they sat by the fire in their private sitting room. Hattie's sitting room now, designed to her preferences, filled with books she loved, and comfortable furniture instead of formal pieces meant to impress. "Read to me?" Herbert requested, settling beside her. Hattie picked up the book they had been working through, a treatise on education reform. Herbert listened with his head on her shoulder, one hand resting on her belly, feeling their child move. This was intimacy. Not just physical joining, though they had plenty of that, but this quiet sharing, ideas exchanged, dreams built together, futures planned in whispers by firelight. "I love you," Herbert said suddenly. "I know I say it often, but I never want you to doubt it. I do not doubt it." Hattie set down the book. "How could I when you show me every day?" "Do I?" "You do. In the school you are building, in the way you treat the staff, in the reforms you implement, in how you hold me at night like I am precious. You show me in 100 small ways that I matter, that we matter. You are the best choice I ever made." Herbert lifted her hand to his lips. "The bravest thing I ever did." "We were both brave." Hattie smiled. "You risked everything for love, and I risked everything by accepting. Regrets?" "None." She kissed him softly. "Fears, yes. Uncertainties, plenty. But no regrets." That night, lying in their bed with snow falling outside and warmth surrounding them inside, Hattie thought about the journey that brought them here. A basket of spilled herbs, a cruel challenge, a wild horse, and two people who learned that love sometimes comes from the most unexpected places. Tomorrow the world would still judge them, would still whisper about the duke who married beneath his station and the servant who rose above hers. But tomorrow they would wake together, face challenges together, and continue building a life that belonged to them. In the darkness, Herbert's hand found hers, squeezed once, a reminder that she was not alone, would never be alone again. And Hattie squeezed back, a promise that she would stay, would fight, would love him through whatever came next, because that was what strength really meant. Not the ability to dominate or control, but the courage to be vulnerable, to choose love over safety, to believe that change was possible and worth fighting for. The servant girl who the world tried to silence had found her voice, and the duke who thought power came from fear had learned that it came from trust. Together, they were writing a new story. One of partnership over hierarchy, of character over class, of love that refused to be bound by rules that served no one. And as snow blanketed Westbridge Hall in its winter embrace, two people from different worlds slept peacefully, knowing that they had found something rare. Not perfection, not ease, but truth, connection, a love that transformed them both. And in the end, that was worth everything they had risked to claim it. Some stories end with certainty, with every question answered and every path clear. But the best stories, the true ones, end with possibility. With two people standing at the beginning of something new, ready to face whatever comes because they face it together. Hattie Miller rose from nothing to become a duchess, but more than that, she became herself, fully, unapologetically. And in doing so, she helped a powerful man discover his own humanity. Perhaps that is what love does when we let it. It does not erase our past or solve all our problems, but it gives us the courage to be more than we thought possible, to choose connection over isolation, to believe that even the most unlikely stories can have the most beautiful endings, and sometimes the greatest strength we ever show is simply choosing to love, even when the world says we should not, even when the cost is high, even when the path is uncertain, because love in the end is always worth the risk. If this story touched your heart, if Hattie and Herbert's journey moved you, would you take a moment to leave a like? Your support means the world and helps others find stories of love that transcends boundaries. Subscribe to the channel for more tales of courage, romance, and unexpected connections. And please comment below and tell me where you are listening from. I love knowing this story reached you, wherever you are in the world. Thank you for being here, for sharing this journey, and for believing in love that refuses to follow the rules. Until our next story, may you always have the courage to choose love over fear, connection over convention, and your own truth over anyone else's expectations. Good night, and may your own love story be just as brave.